Hi, and welcome to You're Gonna Love This, the podcast where we do deep dives into the latest tech, business, and marketing trends, but always with a very sexy European twist. I'm your co-host, Dustin Robinson, a half-Dutch, half-American guy based in Amsterdam.
And I'm Laurine Flavigny, a very Frenchy French based near Nantes.
We have a great show for you today. Laurine and I have spent the past few weeks using Mistral, the French-based AI, as our main LLM, and we're going to share everything that we liked, didn't like, and our thoughts about the future. But there's more.
Yes, after that, we're going to be looking into some of the drama in social media and European law.
The social media crackdown is happening, and we are here for it. I'm excited.
Me too. Let's go.
Let's go. Now, for those that may not be familiar with it, Mistral is the other LLM, the one that most people outside of France have never heard of. It is what they call a frontier AI company, which means it's doing cutting-edge research, building things that are very similar to what Anthropic is doing with Claude or what OpenAI is doing with ChatGPT. The difference is that they are based in Europe and they are much smaller.
Yeah, you could say.
Yeah.
Still, they're growing fast. They're good. They're going for €1 billion revenue for 2026, which for a French company is good.
Which is good. And right now they are on pace to be worth something around 12 billion euros. However, Anthropic is worth 380 and
Yes,
OpenAI is worth 500 billion, respectively.
I know. They're doing it more.
So Mistral is, on one hand, a big deal, but on the other hand, not very big.
No.
But we decided to switch to having it be our main LLM, which is a bit of a change.
You mean you pressured me to use it as my main LLM?
Well, I pressured you to try it in the first place because you never used it, even though you are French.
Yeah, right. That's fair.
Fair enough. And I did think about it because I said, hey, we haven't really used this as our main tool. What would happen if we did this? And for me, there were a couple of things that caused me to consider this. The first is that it's always just good, I think, to try new tools.
Yes.
It helps you to kind of rethink the way you work, experiment with different ways of working. And especially for us, where we're talking about a lot of tech stuff, I think it's good for us to see what the different tools are doing. The other thing is connected to what we've discussed in several of our past episodes, which is European sovereignty.
Yes.
Right. And then the question is, and this is connected to a lot of other European tech products, how good is it compared to the
US
potentially less reliable American alternative?
And we're not just using it as the free version. We also tried the pro version to make sure that we actually get the best out of the tool and a true experience.
So the question is, what has that experience been like? But before we do that, Laurine, what were you like as an AI user before we switched to Mistral Pro?
I've tried the different LLMs. I tried most of them, but always as a free user. Sorry.
You've never paid.
Not until a couple of weeks ago. So basically, I use Gemini at work because this is the one that is the company approved one. And in my day-to-day, when I tried a little bit ChatGPT. I do use it. To be honest, I only use ChatGPT for D&D stuff.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Dungeons and Dragons, sorry. Very reliable for that.
Interesting.
And otherwise, anything where I do research, I tend to use Perplexity, which is a little bit different because it's a skin over different tools like Gemini, Claude, ChatGPT.
It's not its own AI tool, actually.
It's not its own AI tool. It's supposed to, on the free version, it's supposed to pick the best model for your question. So the best is, of course, subjective, but I do find that Perplexity aligns with the way that I research and like to consume information and aggregate key takeaways.
Interesting. I normally use Gemini for work That's what we have a paid license for. And I want to make sure we are keeping all of the company information confidential and in the right
That's good.
system. And if you're not doing that, listener, shame on you. In my day-to-day life, and including with a lot of work for this podcast and doing prep for that, I use ChatGPT. That's what I had a paid subscription for. And I found that there's a lot of stuff that I liked. There's a lot of stuff that bothered me as well. ChatGPT is way too much of a kiss ass, even when you tell it to stop. We'll get into that.
Yes.
So I thought it would be fun just to see what it's like using something else.
Yes.
So what has your experience been like, Laureen? What was it like for you to switch to using Mistral as your main?
So the first thing is saying that it's my main doesn't mean a lot of things because I don't use a lot of LLMs in my day-to-day.
Okay.
So I'm a very old person still defaulting to Google when I'm searching for information or a recipe. But I did use Mistral for podcast research. I usually use LLMs to help me see the gaps in my own research over a topic.
Because you do a lot of your own desk research on Google first.
Yes. Yes. I tend to do that. First, I go to newspapers that I have a subscription to. And
always subscribe to good journalism, guys.
Always. And then I do some more research and I use LLMs to say, all right, this is my take on that. This is a topic. What am I missing? So I tried that with Mistral. And what I've seen is basically I tend to go back to Perplexity or Gemini. Because
what do you mean by that?
I mean that I don't find Mistral as good at poking at the hole in my arguments, at highlighting what am I missing, where am I missing the point. Where I find it good though for the research is when I'm trying to find more information about what is specifically European about that. So when I'm looking for public statements from politicians over Europe or European newspapers, Mistral is a little bit better, but not by much. Not enough that I would actually keep defaulting to it as a main.
Interesting.
So it hasn't been overwhelming,
okay.
I would say, for that use case. Yeah. How did you use it?
So I decided to really go all in, where I was going to even use it more than I normally do, because I actually like using Google to look for stuff, even if it's stuffing things with AI answers now.
Yeah.
I like sometimes going straight to Wikipedia. And then, of course, I'm a huge news junkie, so I'm spending like 45 minutes a day at a minimum reading the newspaper. And then I'm always bookmarking stuff for my knowledge. And I didn't stop reading, but what I started doing is anytime I had a question or wanted to know something, I was using Mistral. So for instance, we had friends over for a cocktail night, and so I asked it for recommendations on different alcohols I could use to mix. So I have some different whiskeys, and I thought, for instance, is there a good whiskey I can use for an old-fashioned cocktail? And Mistral gave me great advice there, telling me not to use my nice whiskeys for an old-fashioned because that is a waste of a nice whiskey, which is correct. So it wasn't
you can count on French advice. Tools and people for advice on alcohol.
Yes. So I really liked that. I thought that was quite good. The other thing that I really liked about Mistral is how fast it is. It is significantly faster than the other tools. And you even see this come out in tests like this. And a side note, this is very interesting because it means that Mistral's tools are very cost efficient. So they aren't lighting as much money on fire every time someone uses their tool. And this has a bunch of promising use cases down the road. We'll get to that in a minute. So I really like that about Mistral. I thought that was quite cool. The other thing that I liked is Mistral, much like Claude, feels like it's built to give me the clearest, most straightforward answer possible.
Without kissing your ass?
And it's not going to kiss my ass, which I really like. And it is also not trying to get me to keep talking with it or use it. Because what I've noticed with ChatGPT and with Gemini to a lesser extent is there's a lot of small nudges in there designed to drive usage. Whereas I feel like Mistral and Claude are a little bit more designed to drive utility.
How did you notice that? Because I didn't. I still saw the follow-up question. Do you want me to do something more for you with Mistral each and every time that I ask something? So I'm wondering, where did you notice that, or how?
So Mistral is still asking me questions. What can I
Mm-hmm.
do here? Claude does the same, but some of it's just the tone or what it's
Okay.
suggesting and the amount of work that it's doing, where it's trying to deliver a core solution to my initial request, but then checking if there's anything else.
Okay.
Whereas ChatGPT is more like that person that won't go away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you might even enjoy talking with them, but at some point you're like, please leave.
Actually, I think that might be why I like Perplexity for deep research. It's because there's a lot of different, oh, do you want to go into that subtopic of the topic? And there's a bunch of that. And it feels like I have a library buddy doing research with me. So it might be why I like Perplexity.
So that's actually a different one because I actually really like ChatGPT for deep research.
Oh, all right.
Because and the way deep research works on ChatGPT, I think is different than Perplexity. Because basically what happens within ChatGPT, and it's evolved a little bit, but normally I tell it I need research in this topic and I give it, some guidelines. Like I prefer journalistic publications over business blogs. Academic research is also good. I always want a European twist on things. And then what it will do is it will ask me some follow-up questions, just saying, hey, to make sure that I'm doing the research correctly, how broad should I be searching? What's the time period? Those type of things. And then it gets me actually just a really good report that honestly reads like it could have been generated by like a good, really strong PhD student or like a
Okay.
really solid junior level researcher. I get a ton of stuff in there. And what I also like about it, especially compared to actually Claude with its research as well, is it defaults to sharing links with everything. So I can always click on
Yes.
everything to learn more. Now,
All
Mistral
right.
does deep research as well. And
Mm.
here's where I was actually not a big fan of Mistral.
Yeah.
It was all kind of out of date
Yeah.
because when I'm using ChatGPT for deep research, I feel like I'm getting the latest information.
Yes.
Whereas, for instance, when I was asking for comparisons around models, Mistral was still talking about Claude 3.5,
Mm-hmm.
whereas Claude just launched Claude 4.6.
4.6. Yes.
Right? So it's super out of date.
So-
And as soon as I started reading this, I was like, none of this is useful to me because it's all old. I'm instantly not trusting the accuracy. So deep
okay.
research, I was surprised because Mistral has made some really great partnerships with journalistic organizations and things
Mm-hmm.
like that for its data sources. So that was my overall experience with it.
Okay. But we didn't try just the day-to-day stuff. You wanted to try something more, which is vibe coding.
Yes.
And I want to hear about your experience with vibe coding.
So vibe coding for people who are using their time in better ways, and that's probably a good thing, is basically
Yeah.
using AI to write code for you. And
Mm-hmm.
there's been a ton of hype around this, especially with Claude from Anthropic, where
Mm-hmm.
Claude code is everywhere and everyone is saying it's the best way to code and build stuff. Hugo, when I interviewed him on the podcast a few weeks ago, talked about how much better Claude Code was than anything else he had ever used when he was building
Mm.
Write Easy, his Substack alternative.
Yes.
And then I thought, all right, what's it going to be like for me as someone who has absolutely zero knowledge of and experience in coding anything?
Mm.
Now, so what I thought is I want to try and vibe code a new Product Hunt alternative called Sovereignty Hunt. Where just like with Product Hunt, how you could submit, your product or your company and have people upvote
Mm.
it, you could do the same thing, but have a focus on European products where they would be upvoted or downvoted based on both their quality and how sovereign they are.
I love that concept.
Yeah, and,
I'll
and
vibe
there are.
code it for you if you want.
Yeah, thank you. I might need your help. There are other websites that cover some of this stuff. There's a website called European Alternatives, for instance, that actually does some of this. But I wanted to just see if I could actually vibe code something. And I ran into problems really quickly because there were so many things I had to download and figure out how to install.
Yes.
And I realized that right now there's still a barrier if you don't know how to code. And so
Yes.
what I ended up having to do, also because Mistral is not as big as Claude, is I had to look at YouTube tutorials for Claude code and then figure out how that works the same way for Mistral. So I spent way
All
too much
right.
time trying to get this to work, and then
Okay.
told it start building this website for me. And I was having good kind of conversations back and forth. I'm good at prompting where I'm not telling it to do things right away, but I'll say, hey, I need this. What information do you need
Mm.
from me? Things like that. And so it built some frameworks and some stuff, but I never got to the point before I went on vacation and wasn't able to do it anymore that I actually had a mock-up of a website on my PC.
Oh,
It didn't work.
really?
No.
Okay. All right.
I got to a whole bunch of outlines on stuff, but I never got farther than that. And
Mm.
just to try it out, I went to Lovable, which
Yeah.
is very big, and told it what I wanted, and with my one free token, it actually generated a pretty decent mock-up of a website.
Yeah.
So my take right now is that Mistral and probably the other coding tools are really great for people who already know at least the basics. Just like actually with prompt engineering, when these LLMs first came out, a lot of people didn't know how to write questions for them. And the
Yes.
tools actually just got better to where you didn't have to do prompt engineering to get the response you needed. I think eventually that will happen with these coding tools, but not right now.
And I agree. I can tell you how I used Mistral for vibe coding.
Yeah, something tells
And-
me you did a little better than I did.
Well, I'm cheating. I do website management for a living. So I have a basic understanding of HTML and CSS, which helps.
Yes.
So, and I think the first thing is I try to make it generate a mockup with a little back and forth conversation on this is what I want to do. And what I picked is basically the home screen of a reading tracker app, an alternative to Goodreads, basically,
Okay.
because I didn't want to think about work. So I wanted something fun.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So I tried to get it to generate the mockup, and it was just not that good. Really not. So I was like, okay, let me do what I do with my developers, which is I do the research and I come up with the concept and basically a first mockup, even if it's not a very advanced one, a first one to have a good conversation. So I did just that. I did a very quick mockup design. And I didn't use Lovable for that because I had in mind something and I wanted to be fast, and it was faster for me to do it directly. And then I fed it to Mistral saying, all right, the first thing that I want you to do is write me all of the technical scope and requirement that would describe this if you were then to work on the development. And I adjusted that first. And then I said, all right, let's take this section and I want you to generate the code for that. And that's where I saw, all right, it did generate the code, but I was like, if I didn't have any knowledge of HTML and CSS, this doesn't explain me how to work with that. What do I do with that code? How do I preview the result? Anything. So for someone who doesn't have any knowledge of that, that's not easy to start with. Where I found it more useful if you don't have a lot of knowledge for coding is pick a tool that you will build your website or tool or app with, which is not just to help you do the code. So maybe it's Webflow for a website, or maybe it's Flutterflow for an app. And then basically tell Mistral, I'm building that in that tool. Now help me build that in that tool and give me a step-by-step, basically. And that was much better, actually. You had very clear instruction with details. You could ask it to clarify some stuff. And it even started to explain some of the code choices, saying, this is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm doing that. And maybe you have another option here. And that was much better because you could learn how it was thinking and how to build that. Now, what I will say...
It sounds like your adventure was a little bit more successful than mine.
Yeah, I do have I have a little bit of HTML in some of the sections of the app. So, but I will say that actually, because I have a little bit of knowledge of HTML and CSS, very quickly I was like, oh, you know what? Damn it. Let me go to Cursor which is a coding assistant where you can do more advanced stuff, where you can manage your entire code base, the files that go with it. You can build agents. I didn't build agents for that, but still, I could basically prompt my way to generating the code, and then I could go into the code and change a few stuff myself, and then go back to prompting and keeping iterating, and that was so much more efficient. So yeah, I love that more.
So you didn't actually stick to the commitment of using Mistral. You tried it and then switched to Cursor.
To be honest, I stuck with Mistral for a long time because I was like, no, I'm committed to that, but damn it, I want to change.
This sounds like somebody who dumped a mediocre boyfriend. I stuck it out as long as I could, and then I was just done with it.
So actually, because I worked on that for several evenings, and the last evening when I switched to Cursor, my husband was like, "You sound a lot more excited. What are you doing?" I was like, I'm finally working with a good tool.
All right. So it sounds like Mistral is not going to be keeping your subscription.
No, I'm sorry. Not now.
Yeah.
I don't think I have enough use cases for Mistral right now. I'm not convinced.
So I don't think I'm going to keep my Mistral subscription for now, even though I kind of want to on principle. I don't think it's there yet. Overall, I'm more positive about it than you are, I think, but it's not quite ready to be a daily driver for me. But to maybe finish out this section, I think that what is interesting about this is that I don't think my views on Mistral not being able to be a daily driver are a problem for Mistral. I don't think that's their focus. And you're starting to see them get some hype in big English language mainstream press, even though they're kind of the forgotten AI company. Like Wired had an article about how they have this new translation model that is giving the other big players a run for their money because it is so small and so efficient. You can probably install this real-time translation tool into hardware. So you could have just some smart glasses or headphones or whatever instantly translating other languages with no lag. That's really cool.
Yes.
And the other thing is, so also they're growing their revenue quite quickly. The Financial Times had a piece about how their annual recurring revenue, which is a big metric that all the AI companies are talking about, is growing really quickly. And I think it's because Mistral is super focused. This is connected to some of the things we've talked about with compared to the other companies. For instance, OpenAI is really not focused. They keep doing different things. Like they tried having an AI TikTok called Sora just a few months ago. That was a total waste of everybody's time. Right. So they have a ton of resources, but not as much focus. And Mistral doesn't have infinite resources. And in the quote from one of its executives, too many GPUs makes you lazy.
Yes.
I thought that was a great quote. I think it really summarizes kind of where they're at and where they're heading. They don't have to be this end all be all tool.
No, and I think that's also why I committed to keep trying it. Not just because you pressured me, because what I see from them is also that focus and that clear vision and strategy of this is where we want to compete. This is where we want to go. So I think, as you said, the focus on being good at some things and not trying to be a little bit good at everything. And also, if we go back to sovereignty, they are very proactive for that. They just announced a new partnership with Echo Data Centers to actually build some infrastructure in Sweden and try to rely a little less on US infrastructure as well. So they're not just saying, hey, we're a good alternative and it would be good for sovereignty. They're actually also living by the principle and trying to do their part in not just offering their tool, but also thinking not just about what they're developing, but the whole infrastructure and everything that goes with it. So the vertical, really. And I find that very interesting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. The other thing I think that is good food for thought for our listeners is the sense that I have right now with these tools is that there's probably a certain kind of quality floor where it's good enough that you don't notice as the average user that something is better. So for instance, all of the more random kind of Google type queries I was doing on Mistral were great. Like during the Olympics, I asked it, what are the rules for curling? Simple things
Nobody
like that.
knows.
We'll get back to that because curling is great. And now I know, because now I know. These tools like Mistral are going to give the average user what they need, which is usually just a simple answer to a question or a basic bit of text. It's not power user cases. It's not professional use cases outside of specific things like coding and engineering for experts in coding and engineering. Because there's that quality floor, we don't know what the ceiling is. But once you hit the floor, there's a ton of different options. Then it's not as big a deal like what's better, Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude or Mistral. You don't have that. And I think that is also going to create some interesting opportunities down the road.
I agree. And for me, that's what I want to see with all of the AI tools right now. I think for me, it's very similar to, the SaaS industry, where you can choose to be like a sort of big platform that covers a lot of use case, but nothing very much advanced, because what you're trying to do is appeal to a bunch of people with 80% of what they need to do. And then you have those that will choose to maybe target a smaller audience, but to allow them to go the extra mile, to actually go for the advanced use cases, which means that you can't do that everywhere. Because as we said, you do great when you focus. And I'm really looking forward to see how that pans out with AI tools. Which one will choose to be your go-to 80%, and which ones will say, no, what we propose, our value is in that case. If we're not for you, that's okay. That's not an issue, because we're going for something that is very clear.
Yeah. So I'm actually still very confident in Mistral's future, even if right now I'm not going to keep my subscription. Oh, one interesting side note. OpenAI is feeling the heat, because when I went to cancel my ChatGPT subscription, they offered me a free month not to leave.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, I'm wondering how much
It's heating up.
Yes, and I'm wondering how much of that has to do also with the announcement about the ads. But we can get back to that on another episode.
Ads. Yeah, that's the other reason that I wish there was a different alternative. That's a different episode.
That's a different episode.
But speaking of companies that suck your soul with ads, we have to talk about...
fantastic transition.
Thank you. We have to talk about the social media crackdown. This is our other deep dive for today, because there has been some really, really interesting stuff happening. Quick recap on a few things. So a couple of weeks ago, the French police raided the X office, formerly Twitter office. The BBC reported that among potential crimes that it said it would investigate, there were complicity in possession or organized distribution of CSAM, child sex abuse materials, infringement of people's image rights with sexual deepfakes, as well as fraudulent data extraction by an organized group. Additionally, the French press agency also reported last year that the French government was investigating X for foreign interference, particularly with its elections. So we had that happening. We'll get back to that in a moment, what happened there. And then we also had the European Commission announcing an investigation of TikTok. For being illegally addictive. We'll get back to that. And then we also have this wave of countries talking about social media bans for minors. Spain came out full-throated about this. The Netherlands, a new government is being formed, and the new government is talking about a ban for social media for kids under 15. The French Parliament also approved a law banning social media for children under 15. So that law is in progress. These laws are popping up everywhere. There is a massive crackdown happening on these social media companies in Europe.
Which is a good thing.
It's a very good thing. So let's look at each of these and kind of talk about what's happening. So, Laurine, in your backyard, the French police went to Elon Musk's weird little obsessive waste of money / dumpster fire and wanted to look around.
I had a proud moment as a French person. I was like, good.
Go France.
Yeah. So what happened is, a raid sounds like something like very violent. In French, it's a perquisition, which
Sounds very
basically
gentle.
very gentle. It's not, but it's basically, it means that basically the police, and here it was the cyber criminality unit, basically, that went into the offices. And that means that they're basically taking any material that can help the investigation into what has been mentioned about CSSM, you said, the acronym?
CSAM, child porn.
CSAM, yes, child porn, basically. So anything about the that can help with the investigation, and that's very much legal in France. That's also how you operate.
Well, especially because X has been very, very opposed to putting any kind of restrictions on Grok or taking stuff down.
Yes.
It was going crazy with these sexualized images, frequently of minors, and they didn't seem to think it was a big deal for a while.
Except that the first research into that investigation showed that almost half of the deepfake images generated by Grok during the period of time, half of that was basically minor in the nudes or with very little clothes, which is a big issue. So yes, you're supposed to restrict that. So there were a bunch of things that led to the investigation. And the thing is, once an investigation like this is launched in France, it goes on, whatever the political context. You're starting the investigation and then you go with a hearing. And so the next
So for the Americans, this is the thing that used to be in the US called rule of law.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a little salty.
Yeah, we still have that here. Basically, some of the next steps is it's also official hearings. So it's not just the raid of the offices, but Elon Musk and the former French directing manager, basically, are called in April for official hearings about some of the decisions around what led potentially to this kind of situation. What did they do? How could they avoid it and such? And there are also employees that will be heard in official testimonials.
And Elon was not happy with this, surprise, and called it a political attack.
Yes.
And then you pointed me towards what I think is probably the most savage official government account that has ever existed.
Another proud moment for me. But basically, yes, Elon Musk stated that this was a political attack, and which is clearly also a way to try to get back the conversation on this is just, this is a matter of influence. This is just a matter of content moderation, where in France we're saying, no, that's criminal. So
this is child pornography and it's
this
not
is
allowed.
Child pornography. This is criminal. It's not political.
Yeah.
But the best thing was, so the French Foreign Ministry has an official account, which I didn't think it was official at first, and you doubted it as well.
I was like, I saw it and I was like, there's no way this is an official government account.
It is an official
on Twitter.
one. Basically, a couple of months ago, the French Foreign Ministry launched an account on X, which is called French Response. And it is very sassy. So it's using meme, GIFs, and a very sassy tone of voice to answer political statements, especially from the US, but not only. And so what they answered on X directly is investigating child abuse material isn't controversial. Turning it into political theater is manipulation. Maybe that logic flies on some island, doesn't fly in France. So that's the official French response.
It's so savage. It's so savage. Oh.
So I don't use X anymore. I haven't for a while. But I swear, anytime that I hear about French response, I click on the link just to see what they're answering. Yeah. And the whole thing is brilliant.
Yeah. It's so good. They're great. So that's what's happening. We're going to have to wait to see how this materializes. Yes. But there's enough legitimate concerns around the harm that X is causing across a wide range of areas.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't too surprised. What did surprise me was this official investigation for TikTok being addictive.
Yes.
And they're using the Digital Services Act for this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Digital Services Act is a milestone piece of legislation designed to regulate really large tech companies, including social media companies. Now, when I read about this law and tried looking into it before and understanding how it worked, I was always focused more on the business services side of things. how does something work and what's it supposed to do. I'd never thought about rules around addictive design.
Yes.
Because we all know this. For instance, Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, has called the social media companies cigarette companies. And I don't think anybody would disagree with that. There was the book last year from Jonathan Haidt called The Anxious Generation that really did a lot of deep dives into the addictions and harms of social media. So this is not new. But I didn't know that there were actually laws in place that could fight this. And this is where the European Commission got in and had some things to say. So it's a preliminary finding, so it has to be fully investigated. But what they are saying is that TikTok didn't even try testing to see how addictive their features were and didn't look into how that could actually hurt the, quote, physical and mental well-being of its users, including minors and vulnerable adults. And then they give some examples. So for instance, because they're always rewarding users with new content, this can fuel the urge to keep scrolling. And you see this where you'll have people talk about how they will look at a TikTok video and then like 4 hours later realize they're still sitting on the couch.
They're still scrolling.
Yeah. For instance, my wife doesn't use TikTok, but she uses YouTube Shorts, and she has asked me to create a password on her phone with like a time limit. And then it just turns off because it's so addictive. Yeah.
It's saying we can spend a lot of time on YouTube Shorts. And I'm like, do you realize how long you've been scrolling?
Yeah. You just lose the track of time.
Yes, completely.
And I'm not surprised because these companies have put the most talented, most brilliant people on the planet to work at figuring out how to get you to never put your phone down.
Yes.
And now it turns out there might actually be a legal basis for restricting this. So this is just the beginning. It's just looking at this addictive design. We're going to have to see where it goes. Obviously, TikTok will have an opportunity to tell its own side of the story and to appeal. But this is huge because if this happens, and the funny thing is, most people won't disagree with it. The American Surgeon General under Joe Biden actually suggested there should be like a warning label on social media, similar to cigarette warning labels.
Yes, I remember.
This is kind of the beginning of that, which could really change the way we interact with these incredibly large and powerful platforms. Because if they're not allowed to be addictive, this could free up a lot of time, improve mental health, and give us access to additional and better sources of entertainment and information.
What I loved about that as well is that there were already discussions around TikTok being addictive. It's not the first time that the European Commission has said, we don't like what you're doing here. But what I loved about that case right now is that they also debunked the fact that there are options to not be addicted to it. Like you can put some time limit or there is parental control. And basically the EU was like, don't kid yourself. The time limit is very easy to ignore and the parental control is not enough. So right now, this is not enough. You need to do better. And I love the fact that you cannot just, do virtue signaling or posturing, that you actually have to improve your product.
Yeah. Oh, and like talking about these parental controls and time limits, it's such nonsense. It's like talking about how my cigarettes have filters in them. That doesn't do anything.
Great, so it's not burning air going into your lungs.
Yeah. And then the last one of these things is the social media bans.
Yes. So this is actually in the news right now in France because this has been very recent. But from what I understand, there's actually been some talk in the European Commission in November, end of November, to start introducing a full European ban for minor under 16. And then we have some governments that are saying, no, 15. And France is one of them. So in France right now, there's a law that's just been proposed to ban social media for children under 15. And so it's in progress. We'll see if it's confirmed. But already there's a lot of talk around that in the newspaper because this is a big decision.
Yeah. And you're seeing this in all kinds of countries where they're talking about it. And what is interesting is that it's not connected to any specific ideology politically.
No.
It's not just a left thing or a right thing. It's kind of across the board.
Mm.
Where there is some variances, some countries are talking about having rules where you can't have a social media account without your parents' permission.
Mm-hmm.
I personally don't like those rules because that's like saying if your kid wants to smoke cigarettes and you're okay with it, it's allowed.
It's fine.
Yeah. Bad parenting should not be encouraged.
No.
So it's just, you should ban it for everybody. This is a lot of stuff gaining momentum.
Yes.
There's two reasons why I think this is happening. So the first one is the obvious reason, which is protecting kids. This is something that everybody agrees with. It's very rare for there not to be consensus on that, except for on that island that Elon may have flown to.
Except for this one.
Except for that one. But there's a lot of support for that. However, I think there may be a second play, and this is speculative. I don't have anything to back this up, but it's the fact of the matter is that all of these social media platforms, especially now that TikTok has been sold to American owners, are owned by people you could characterize as American oligarchs.
Yes.
Who have, in many instances, spoken out against the EU and the European mission of democracy and rule of law and kind of bringing these countries together. And they own the most powerful information platforms on the planet that literally shape how people see the world and don't necessarily decide elections, but can certainly drive them.
Yes.
And restricting the power of these things is probably going to be crucial to keeping the European dream alive and healthy.
You mean maintaining democracy?
Yes. Yes. Like these platforms, Meta platforms and X in particular, are a fundamental threat to democracy. So that's kind of my take on this. But there's one other thing I want to add, which is interesting. So we have this stuff happening in Europe, and in the US, there is no law really that's being proposed. Instead, what's happening is lawsuits, which is a much less healthy approach to solving problems because it just requires a lot of money and
resources. Yes.
And it doesn't come from a democratic decision to get things done. It's not necessarily bad, but we have two big lawsuits right now. One is in Los Angeles against Meta and YouTube. PBS reported that TikTok and Snap were also sued, but they settled. And they are being sued for what the European Commission is looking into, which is deliberately addicting and harming children.
Already you said it. TikTok and Snap already settled. So the case is going away.
Yeah. And so this is one of the problems with the lawsuits is that you can kind of settle to buy it off, right? And then the New Mexico lawsuit, this is started by the state, so settlements are less common. I'm not sure about the Los Angeles one, if that's from plaintiffs or if it's coming from the state. But the New Mexico lawsuit is showing that prosecutors will say they'll provide evidence and testimony that Meta's algorithms and account features enticed and addicted young people to social media while also creating a breeding ground for predators who target children for exploitation.
Yes.
Pretty hefty.
Like we need that right now.
Yeah. So that's heavy stuff. And so it's just interesting to see this contrast because some American leaders are accusing the European Union of censorship and those type of things. The same arguments are being made by many concerned parents in the US, but it's not gaining any political traction.
No.
It's not appearing in legislation. So it has to appear through lawsuits. Whereas in Europe, representatives are actually taking action on these concerns of the citizens. So it's good that it's happening both ways. I would prefer it happening through legislators.
For me, all of those cases, it made me think again of a discussion that we had early on in this podcast about the fundamental difference between the US and EU on how and why do we regulate technology, basically. So in the US, innovation is the key and it's the primary criteria. So you can do anything as long as you progress and grow and bring innovation. But in Europe, there is no turning a blind eye for the sake of innovation. It's not enough to say we're going to innovate. Yeah, great. Are you serving democracy? Are you serving the people? Are you not hurting people's mental health and everything? So basically, if you don't do that, you will see your power limited and abuse sanctioned, which as a European feels right. And I think those regulations are guardrails against those tech giants. And I think it's good that we see them being enforced right now, which is, given the context, it's also a way, I think, for Europe to say, hey, you know what? We're not without leverage. Threaten everything that you want, but we do have resources as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think this is potentially a real turning point with how a lot of this
Yes.
stuff is going to happen. So I'm curious to see how this continues. We'll see how it evolves, but
Yeah.
definitely
I'm a
something to
little
keep an eye on.
anxious, but definitely curious.
Yeah, it'll be a good thing. It'll be a good thing.
All right. That was a lot of things.
That was a lot of things. Very dramatic at the end.
A little bit.
We'll be right back with our moment of nerd.
In each episode, we like to end with what we call the moment of nerd. It's about something that we read, heard, anything that makes our little nerdy heart go pitter-patter. And you have something, Dustin.
I do. It's connected to what I mentioned earlier in the episode. I was on vacation with my wife and my in-laws, and we were watching the Olympics, and curling was on. And everyone was like, why are we watching this? And I was like, no, this is cool. I got super into curling. It was so much fun to watch. I can only get excited about curling during the Olympics. There is no way I would watch this outside of the Olympics. But during the Olympics, my goodness, it is so much fun. Curling is cool. Curling is cool.
I'm sorry, I'm not convinced.
Yeah, I think I'm the only one who feels this way.
Yeah.
But
that's a very nerdy moment.
It is very nerdy. But you mentioned using ChatGPT for something nerdy as well.
Yes, I'm sorry. It was just before I bought the subscription to Mistral. But we basically had a Dungeon and Dragons session a month ago that ended up with each character gaining some mystery objects. So you had to choose. You had several objects that were be gifted to you, and you had to pick one, but you didn't know anything about the object, its magic properties, anything. And we were given by the game master a couple of days to choose. And my husband said, you can cheat with that, right? I was like, how? And he said, copy paste the description of all of the objects, put it in ChatGPT and ask it basically which object from Dungeons and Dragons could that be? Which is exactly what I did. And I ended up with a very nice ring of protection for my wolf.
So you used ChatGPT to cheat at Dungeons and Dragons?
Yes, I did. And I'm not even ashamed.
Well, I'm happy for you.
I can see the game master in you being like, ugh.
Yeah. Why you can't do that? Yeah, I'm a dungeon master in my D&D stuff, and yes, these things drive the dungeon master insane.
Sorry.
But enough about that. That was the show. Thanks everybody for listening.
And if you like the show, do not forget to leave us a rating on the platform of your choice and share with your friends.
Thanks everybody, and see you next time.
Thanks, bye.